emergency for the first time in about
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 1403.JM0318. Certificate number 21362. Vortex I.
Vortex I. It sounds like this is a new ad we're doing for a toilet bidet attachment.
Ken, how does Vortex I work?
Well, are you still using toilet paper, John? No, Vortex I is not a kitchen small appliance. It's not a jacuzzi. It does have a very 70s sound. Like, yeah, we just bought the new Vortex I, but it's not clear whether it's a personal computer the size of a suitcase or whether it's a hot tub.
It's like a small Pontiac.
Does it make yogurt smoothies?
Well, it also sounds like a billionaire space race entry, like some lesser billionaire.
Like today?
Yeah, like a macaw or somebody tried to get into the space race.
No. The Walmart daughters each have a space spinoff now.
No, we have the Vortex I.
Where were you in the summer of 1970, John? Paint a picture for future viewers who do not remember the summer of 1970.
The summer of 1970. Well, my sister wasn't born yet. I was 1.5, or I was probably 18 months old.
So you're wearing some kind of corduroy overalls?
I was absolutely wearing some blue corduroy overalls. I was having lots of tea parties. We were living in Kingston, Washington.
Right across the strait from beautiful Edmonds.
That's right.
Hometown of Rick Steves and me.
That's right. And I was having a lot of tea parties. There was a little girl who lived next door named Bonnie, and Bonnie and I every day would convene, me in my corduroy overalls.
And a big teddy bear the size of both of you?
Well, and I had who
were the guests?
That was the Tonka toy, the big Tonka toy era. I had a dump truck.
Does Tonka still exist?
I'm not sure, but they haven't been like the big, they were made out of...
Yeah, they were actually made out of like some kind of die-cut metal.
Yeah, they were made out of steel. They were kind of dangerous. You could cut yourselves on them, but they were real trucks. And then Bonnie and I just loved having tea parties. And
I like how you're doing the Macklemore thing where you're like, yo, when I was 3, I was having tea parties. But for real, man, my Tonka trucks were there.
But I had a Tonka, so, it's cool. And yeah, we did a lot of, I think she and I, there are a lot of photographs, black and white photographs of the two of us sitting at a little table.
Because you can't possibly remember this. All your memories of this must come through the faded Kodachrome.
We had our house sat up on a bluff and it was on the water, so we looked out over the ferry terminal.
Can you see it when the ferry comes in?
The house is still there, but it's been dramatically modified, and you can really see it now because it has a blue aluminum roof. It has a metal roof now that's like blue. So when you're coming in on the Kingston Ferry, you look over to the left and it's about halfway up the bluff. It's like, I guess they would call it High Bank now.
That's a neighborhood?
High Bank instead of Mid Bank.
Oh,
like when you buy waterfront property in Washington, it's like, is it Low Bank? Is it Mid Bank?
Just a tip for the future. Don't buy Low Bank going forward.
No, although Low Bank it used to be like the more expensive property.
I know. It's shelf life.
Yeah, but High Bank, we're right at the High Bank level, and the house is very visible. When we lived in it, it was just a little ramshackle, sort of bunch of sheds that had been connected. When my mom said when they bought it, it had like 20 rooms, but they were all 6 by 11 or something. So they tore out all the walls.
I've looked at houses like that.
Yeah.
And I wonder who built this and why.
Well, who's living in this house?
Who wanted this David Lynchian burrow?
And it was in Kingston, so not
Right.
like what are they doing out there on the bluff?
It was a cult.
But so yeah, we were still using only black and white cameras at the time because there are no.
They hadn't put colored film on the ferry.
1969, 1968. I mean, I guess there are some Kodachrome stuff other people took, but my parents were classic black and white people until. Is there
8mm of you having silent tea parties?
Yeah, there is. Although it never got transferred to video, so it's still sitting on. It's gradually decaying.
We never had anything pre-VHS, and I guess those need to be transferred now.
VHS,
You got to put your old VHS movies in the cloud.
Yeah, there are pictures of me toddling around. There's cassettes of me babbling because my mom was so fascinated. I would sit in my room by myself and just talk to myself for hours.
Who could have predicted?
Pre-language.
Who could have predicted?
And she would a couple of times put a microphone in there and just.
And every 30 minutes you'd stop for a Squarespace ad. And then you'd go back to just blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah,
Your future is set. I was not born yet in the summer of 1970, so I don't have charming stories.
You weren't even a twinkle in your parents' eye.
My parents weren't even married.
Whoa.
My parents got married in 1972. I know that because they saw What's Up, Doc on their honeymoon. I guess they could have gone to Godfather, but they didn't.
Did they, or they could have gone to The Conversation. That would have been a nice wedding event.
No, that's 74. That's the same year as Godfather Part 2.
Godfather 2. That's right.
I'm
Sorry.
pretty sure. They could have gone to that while they were in labor.
Did they know each other in 1970?
Yeah, I think they both went to Meadowdale High here in Edmonds.
So they did it. There was a twinkle. Oh wait, they were in high school across the
just a few miles away. Yeah, they were. Maybe they could see your house from Meadowdale Beach.
I want to know the closest your parents and I were to one another at any point in the late 60s, early 70s, because I'm sure I was getting off the ferry and they were on their way to high school or something, and we passed within 50 feet of each other.
And they were like, look at that weird kid in the corduroy overalls and the big beard.
Just talking.
Well, the funny thing is now, today, I mean, future couples will be able to do that backward compatible thing, maybe, if they were holding a device that tracked their movements.
Right. Where was I on this date? And it's like, whoa, we're waiting in line at the supermarket.
Have you seen stories like that? Like where a couple gets married and then it's not until after they're engaged that they find out.
They realize they're brother and sister.
Yeah, of course. They're brother and sister. No, but their family has photos of them on Main Street at Disneyland. Like one of them is in the background of the other's photo or something.
I haven't seen this. Is this really a thing?
Yeah, this happens from time to time. I mean, Disneyland is very often the nexus because where would people from different geographies be taking a ton of pictures in a crowd?
Right.
But yeah, no, like in the future.
At a presidential inauguration, maybe. Or
is that where you were hoping to meet that special someone? We were
1972.
We were both at Nixon's second inauguration, baby. We have a lot in common. I mean, you would have to date people who were alive in 72. Are you okay with that compromise?
Boy, you're right. That limits. No, it probably expands the pool, actually.
I want to move down the Pacific coast a little bit to beautiful Portland, Oregon. I'm not going to say Oregon and piss people off.
So I know a little bit about Portland in 1970 because my aunt and uncle were living there.
Did you ever go down and visit?
Well, they had that house in Gerhardt,
yeah.
So we would go down there, and we did go, but I obviously don't remember it. But I do remember them talking about Portland in the early 70s.
But not in the same way that people today in rural places talk about Portland and Seattle as like a fallen dystopia they've heard about on conservative news.
No, at the time, Portland
was a reliably red state through Bush Dukakis, maybe?
Or Oregon, yeah.
Yeah,
and I think at the time, Portland's heyday was a long time before that.
Lumber
and like agriculture shipping.
Mouth of the Columbia stuff.
But I think by 1970, nothing interesting had been happening in Portland for a long, long time. And it was a sleepy little nowheresville, which it was until 2000 and what? 10?
It was all rents
12?
in Seattle rising that created modern Portlandia. I was just there last weekend, and since you mentioned Gerhardt, let me just get totally off the subject.
Let's go all
there
the
was
way.
There was an exhibit.
Go the distance.
There was an exhibit at an Oregon Historical Museum about early Portland beach culture, like 20th century. Because Seaside and Gerhardt were where you would go. There was no, it would take days to get there on some weird. No, it would take like the better part of a day to get there on some weird tram or something.
Right.
And then the husbands would all show up later in the weekend on the daddy train.
The daddy train.
Which is something different in Portland today.
Why is that not a thing?
And so the exhibit had all these postcards written home from kids who were loving their beach getaway but could not wait for the daddy train.
If anyone would like to get on the daddy train, just write us at Omnibus.
So so Gerhardt was like early. It was like it was the Atlantic City boardwalk or whatever the Long Island of early 20th century Portland.
Yeah, what's interesting is that those beach towns, Gerhardt in particular, is built in the Cape Cod style.
Yeah, and probably for that reason, like this is where you're going to have
the whole town,
your nice getaway, as if you were a Boston Brahmin.
It was all designed in that Cape Cod revival style. But what I learned was that Cape Cod as a revival style was not really any older than Gerhardt.
Oh, Cape Cod is like all those, all that Provincetown stuff is from the same era?
Well, I mean, it's all based on a colonial revival thing, but it's based on the original colonial, but colonial revival was a thing that happened nationally contemporaneous with Gerhardt. So Gerhardt, it's not anachronistic, right? It's not like, whoa, it's just a fake Cape Cod. It's like, no, this is actually just as fake as the ones
you're buying
that
taffy that was
Boston.
made in 1932.
Yeah.
So in sleepy Portland in the summer of 1970, two friends named Robert W-E-H-E Weehee? Way?
W-H-E-He-We? What was it?
Some of those are not letters, John. W-E-H-E. Way?
Yeah, well, hey.
You think it's Chinook jargon?
Yeah, is it a Native
Does
American
it have one
name?
of those upside down question mark things?
Well, hey.
Robert Wee and Glenn Swift hop in their Opel Kadett. You're loving this already.
I do. The Opel Kadett.
And drive from Salem up to Portland.
It's like it's basically the Opel Kadett is the German version of the.
Let's look at a picture
of the Pontiac Vortex I.
Oh wow! Yeah, this is exactly how you want it to look.
Yeah.
Okay, they hop in their Opel Kadett and drive up from Salem to Portland because they want to see Governor Tom McCall, the governor of Oregon, today immortalized. Today, I think he's a fondly remembered governor. The big waterfront park in Portland is Tom McCall Waterfront Park to this day.
Because that was an industrial wasteland, and he was one of the first visionary late 60s, early 70s mayors that was like, why don't we stop pouring sewer water right into the river and like put a bike trail there?
Socialist. Portland to this day, I love Portland so much, but unlike Seattle, it does not have the beautiful hills and beaches Portland's extremely flat, which is lovely for bicycling.
It's good for biking.
And it does not have beautiful hills and beaches and vistas.
It's got that south hill, but
you could see.
Try getting there.
You could see Mount Hood on a clear day.
You can see Mount Adams on a clear day.
You can, but there is a lovely waterfront park now, thanks to that remembers. It's
lovely.
Fine. I feel like every time I've been there, there's been some beer festival going on with
That's what they do
with those little Ferris wheels they bring in on a truck.
Yeah.
Robert and Glenn want to see Governor McCall because they have an idea. They are from a counterculture group called The Family.
Oh, they're going to assassinate him.
So how can this go wrong?
Oh, The Family, legendary Northwest The Family.
I think this is actually a nice group called The Family.
It's not the group from Cedro Woolley.
No,
called The Family?
Nobody's going to get stabbed. There's no letter bombs, package bombs in this story.
How many The Families are there in the Northwest?
These are just a bunch of college kids in Salem who have an idealistic idea, and they cannot see. Governor McCall will not see them. And so they settle for a meeting with his chief of staff, one Ed Westerdahl, who also does not want to take the meeting, but gets cornered into it and takes a few meetings with these probably smelly kids from Salem.
Yeah. They're not from Reed. This sounds like something from Reed.
Yeah, I mean, where Where are they going to school if they're coming up from? Maybe they're not in school if they're coming up from Salem.
Well,
they must just be locals.
No, they're at. They're coming from Willamette.
Oh, is that where Willamette U is?
Willamette U is in Salem.
Go Willamette. By the way, people say Willamette wrong a lot.
Who?
People.
They say it as Willamette?
Yeah. Have you not heard? Like, if you're not from the Northwest, you just think it's Willamette, and we should make a point for the future.
Oh, no, it's Willamette. Yeah. We're sorry. We pronounce everything just slightly wrong up here. You can never look at a thing and know how we say it.
It was Lewis and Clark's fault.
You mean Luis and Clark?
They had a falling out. One of them was saying Willamette, and one of them was saying Willamette. We
played at Willamette once, the Long Winters. It was a great show.
What's that school like?
Small, cool. It was one of those shows. This happens sometimes when you're in a band. It's like a festival put on by a college, and all day long, there are 5 bands or something like that, and the crowd just seems really kind of sparse, and people just sort of wandering around the fringe.
Sure.
And you're like, oh, this is going to be a terrible show. Like, why did we ever agree to this? And then, as the headliner, you walk out on stage, and suddenly there are 1,200 people there that weren't there 5 minutes before. Usually we were the victim of this because we were opening for we were opening for the presidents of the USA or whatever, and it's like, why is there no one here? And then all of a sudden there were. But at this show, we were the headliner.
Where are they coming from? UFOs are dropping them off.
They all, the the headliner goes on at 8, and they're all smoking weed in their dorms until 7:56.
They were pre-gaming. So just to set the scene a little bit about the summer of 1970, you probably remember this from your tea parties. Were you and Bonnie talking about the firebombing of Cambodia?
That was on TV a lot. Yeah.
Nixon had just invaded Cambodia. I mean, not personally. He didn't stride across the jungle like Dr. Manhattan, but the U.S. had just invaded Cambodia in April.
Right. Just handing Pol Pot his set of encyclopedias. His
9-year-old assistants. And a few weeks later, as a result, one of many results, the killings at Kent State happened in early May. So, a large group of kids protesting the invasion of Cambodia got fired on by the National Guard. 4 dead in Ohio.
I've been to Kent State too.
Did you guys play?
No, we were not invited to play, but I did. I was in the neighborhood and I was like, let's go see it. I've been to Dealey Plaza.
It's a big memorial, right?
Yeah, it is.
And were you there just like at Dealey Plaza to see if JFK Jr. was coming back?
No, I wasn't there for that. The Dealey Plaza thing was weird.
Is it Dealey? I've been saying Dealey my whole life.
Oh, I always say Dealey.
See, if we were from Texas, this is the Willamette of Dallas.
They probably say it Daily, and it wouldn't help us.
Yeah, we wouldn't know.
But I was driving through Dallas, and I had that weird experience where you come through the tunnel.
I want to shoot the president.
Well, a little bit. You come through the tunnel, and you're like, weird. I feel like I've been here.
Oh yeah.
And the road kind of
I've never been.
It splits off into a V. Like the traffic going into town goes to the right, and then the road that Kennedy was on is coming from the left. And
typical. Yeah,
exactly. And they combine to go under the tunnel. But so you're in this space all of a sudden, because on the other side of the train tracks, you don't feel like it's not familiar.
History could not possibly happen, right? It's kind of it feels like a weird spot anyway, right?
Yeah, it feels like it's almost like a gate to the city, right? The railroad tracks feel like a medieval wall, and you come through the tunnel and then you're in Dallas, there it is. But you're also like, it's just strange how you've seen it your whole life from 1,000 angles, except for this one, which is coming through and it took a second, but looking around, even in a moving car, you're like, wait a minute. I know this place.
That's funny.
Oh, wait, and then you're just like...
And then you duck.
Well, no, then you slam on the brakes, right? Cause there's probably 60 accidents an hour in that spot.
It's second only to the Abbey Road crosswalk.
And then there's a man with an umbrella and a woman in a red coat.
Yeah, what do they say in the Oliver Stone movie? It's a shooting gallery or something like that.
Yeah, it's a fishbowl.
Something like that. So as a result, these college so there's a big memorial at Kent State now. I've seen pictures. And as a result, these protests, which had been going on all through the 60s, just spread through the country, including in Oregon. That there were thousands of protesters at U of O, and that those turned violent. At OSU in Corvallis, they bombed the ROTC building. But things got really bad at Portland State.
They're still bad at Portland State.
You got to be careful. You don't know who's listening. 135 professors canceled class in solidarity with the student movement there.
Right.
They had like a more sympathetic leadership administration.
Right in the heart of town, Portland State.
Right. And but students started blocking streets. They occupied the student union.
That's still true to this day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you were just there. Is that area still kind of a like an encampment? I mean, I guess all the cities in the West now are basically just encampments.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell the difference between activism and the unhoused population in a lot of these big cities. Portland in particular, it's having a rough time right now. They just can't cope with the scope of the problem. But back then, it's a very conservative city.
Sure.
They've got their police chief and particularly their mayor and their parks commissioner are, law and order, dyed in the wool. We're not having this.
Michael Douglas in Falling Down.
Exactly. They've all got crew cuts and they don't want the dirty hippies in their parks. And so that's why Parks Commissioner Frank Evancy becomes a player here, because all the PSU students are camped out at a local park. And he's like, no. And over the objections of other officials, he sends in cops and protesters get clubbed, and tensions start to run high in the summer of 1970 in the streets of Portland. And in particular, 31 kids in this, after the Parks Commissioner sends in his Parks and Rec goons. Why is the Parks Commissioner sending in cops? But 31 of these kids have to seek medical help, and out of it forms a kind of a newly radical and militaristic wing of the student movement called the People's Army Jamboree. So at the end, it's fun.
Yeah.
But there's also an army, and in particular, the People's Army.
It's a strange juxtaposition.
I guess scouts have jamborees, and they're all uniformed up.
They're pretty militaristic.
They've got knives and memories of the Boer War, as we've discussed.
But no one would say that they were the People's Scouts.
No, they're not. They're not a Khmer Rouge type uprising.
And that's the thing. Like a Maoist movement doesn't usually have a jamboree.
Do they have patches?
They must.
Yeah, they must have merit badges of some kind and big elaborate award ceremonies. So they have some scouting DNA.
Although that's pretty bourgeois to have an award ceremony.
I don't know.
Everyone should be equal in the People's Army Jamboree, Ken.
I just feel like, each village does have some brave soul who gets to come up and and shake hands with the chairman and get their patch.
Maybe they get an extra bag of rice. From each according to his ability.
That sounds more corrupt if you're getting a bag of rice. And here's the problem. The People's Army Jamboree has a very specific...
Do they have a banjo? Is there a bear that plays the banjo?
It's not that kind of jamboree. They have a very specific policy goal here, because through a series of unfortunate events, the American Legion,
here we go.
The conservative veterans organization,
sure,
is having its summer convention that year in, guess where? Portland, Oregon.
This is starting to sound like a Hunter S. Thompson book.
Fear and Loathing in the Rose District.
Or like a Tom Wolfe novel of the same era.
And the theme of the American Legion convention that summer couldn't be better.
Kill the hippies.
Victory in Vietnam.
Wow.
Victory in Vietnam.
They weren't reading the room.
We're just gotta keep bombing and invading, and it's bound to happen. And they've invited a special guest, you love him, President Richard M. Nixon.
To come to Portland.
To come to Portland and speak to the American Legionnaires.
Wow. Holy cats.
Yes. So, they're not going to have Legionnaire's disease maybe, but it seems like it could be worse. There could be more deaths.
This is a long time before Watergate. Nixon is, he had not yet been to China?
Yeah, the summit with Mao is 1972.
Right.
So he has not yet received whatever patches Mao gave him.
But he's still doing the we can win in Vietnam. It's all happening. We've been to outer space. We've been to the moon.
Yeah, Nixon's name is now on the moon in 1970, which not a lot of other
take that,
not
Johnson.
A lot of other corrupt politicians can say. And Governor McCall starts to be concerned because it becomes clear that all parties here are spoiling for a fight. The American Legion would love it if their convention became a flashpoint of, we can put down the hippies. The People's Army Jamboree wants to get into the headlines, clubbing and getting clubbed. The Nixon administration in particular seems not concerned at all. They would love to have in some lower tier American city, the specter of, the dirty counterculture rising up and the law and order forces of the Nixon administration putting it down. This would, no matter what happens, it's going to play well with voters in 72.
The 68 Democratic convention in Chicago and the subsequent police riot.
That's the data point there that McCall's worried about.
Right.
Like, what if this is Chicago all over again? And the FBI is coming to him and saying, don't worry, it's actually going to be much, much worse. we're looking at the numbers. Here's how many kids are going to be flocking up here. They're not all going to be putting flowers in rifles. Like, here's the number of National Guard. It's going to be worse than daily Chicago. And in sleepy Oregon and sleepy Portland, that's not what the governor wants to hear. He's also up for election 7 weeks after the convention.
Yeah, right. So the governor is stressing about it.
Yes.
Because we're very famous up here in the Northwest for taking what would be a pretty boring convention, say for instance, of World Trade Organization delegates.
Something that you wouldn't even notice unless you were walking through the lobby of the Westin that day.
Right. And turning it into a week-long absolute frenzy.
Where you still see clips in Rage Against the Machine videos to this day. Yeah. And this is kind of, maybe this is the beginning of the Northwest as, it seems like the Nixon administration is specifically considering using it as that dangerous part of the country over there, which is kind of how it functions in conservative media to this day. You're not from Seattle. It's way over there in the corner, and it has fallen to the socialists. Yeah, and it's a boogeyman.
It was certainly, I don't remember exactly when Wavy Gravy arrived in Eugene, but
yeah, that's a good question. Was Eugene already hippied up in 1970 for sure?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. So it was happening.
It's all happening.
It's all happening, man. Yeah, I think the Merry Pranksters bus arrived in Portland or in
yeah, Kesey's from Eugene.
Yeah, he's from
so they
Eugene,
come by their Kool-Aid naturally. He's a native, I think.
Yeah, it's Berkeley
outside of Eugene, Goshen maybe.
Goshen.
It's on the way to I used to spend my summers in Eugene as a kid. Drive through Goshen, and my Bible conversant parents would always say "Land of Goshen." Like they were the Jodes.
They really are something. Your Bible-adjacent parents.
Do you think they're the last people in America to say "Land of Goshen"?
No, I don't believe they are.
I mean, they wouldn't say it when the dog got into the peanut butter. They would say it when they passed a road sign that said Goshen, Oregon, population 741.
They wouldn't say it when they struck oil accidentally by shooting at a varmint?
Yeah, we're going to go to the cement pond.
No, I'm sure there are people in red state America who are bringing back Land of Goshen. Because it reflects
make America Goshen again.
Their American values.
Yeah. Why did Margaret Atwood use Gilead as the name of her ethno state? It could have been Goshen.
Your dad is a punning dad.
Unfortunately,
but you are
all dads
punning dad.
All dads are punning.
No, I don't
dads.
pun. I don't make puns.
You don't? You just make your mom jokes.
Name a pun. Yeah, I do make your mom jokes, but name a pun I've ever made. I'm sure there are listeners to the program, future links.
There's a complete list on the Discord.
Cataloged our 2 puns.
You're going to hear it. So into this powder keg with a worried governor, worried about not just riot in the streets, but also his reelection prospects, come Robert Way, Wehe, and Glenn Swift, who are alarmed about the People's Army jamborization of what they think should be a peaceful, chill youth movement.
Oh, so they're
called the family, but they're not because they're going to murder people.
I see. They're the moderates.
Yeah, they're the cool hippies.
They're the mainstream Democrats of this story.
They're the new Democrats. All these guys voted for Reagan twice and Clinton twice. And that's what I'm saying.
I mean, Nike hasn't been invented yet, but the Jamboree is already threatening to burn down the Nike store.
Yeah, if there was one, the Doc Martens store would probably be okay. Extremists from both sides of the spectrum need their Doc Martens. Right. And so they've got an idea. They think
have a jamboree. No, wait, that's the other side.
Well, they want a real jamboree. They want to tell Governor McCall, and they settle for his chief of staff, that instead of taking a hard line against these protests, that the state of Oregon should try a diversionary tactic.
Oh,
a 3-day weekend festival of music and pot and
go on.
and issues and dancing and fun and
Vegetarian food.
tofu under the stars, and it's a diversionary tactic.
Krishna,
basically.
Hare Krishna.
Send all the kids to a free music festival.
Where? On the waterfront?
Well, that's the problem.
Oh,
They want two things. They want the governor to give them free access to a state park.
yep.
And number two, they want no cops. Police turn a blind eye, low police presence. Yes, everybody's going to be smoking grass. And yes, people are going to be shimmying naked in the moonlight and possibly in the daylight, depending on what they've ingested.
Sure.
And the cops will not say boo.
So they want to have a rainbow gathering, basically.
That's exactly it. And they're like, it's going to be well behaved. We'll just, you don't have to worry about violence. Like, this is the thing that's going to stop
hippies
violence.
Self-police. There's only violence if you put hard hats in the equation. If it's just hippies, what are they going to do?
If there's no rifles to put a flower in, you just put the flowers in your hair and eat some mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
So, Chief of Staff Ed Westerdahl actually thinks this kind of sounds like a good idea.
Is he a young chief of staff? Is he kind of like, does he have sideburns, this guy? I'm picturing him as like the 28-year-old chief of staff who can like rock a tie, but he does have like longer hair.
That is correct. He is 34. He was an intelligence officer in Vietnam in the 50s. I'm now looking up Westerdahl's
there you go.
CV. He died in 2010. But yes, he was a young, sideburns, but former also Army intelligence.
Yeah.
But he spins his chair out of the wall.
He's a John Dean.
And he thinks about it, and he thinks, maybe this is just the kind of outside-the-box idea the governor needs.
Right.
He walks into McCall's office, or, he mentions it to McCall's staff. I think he sends out a memo. And predictably, Mayor, what's the name of Portland's name? Mayor Strunk and, baton slapping Parks Commissioner Evansi, just laugh like
what?
This is insane. And Governor McCall's first response is, "Are you out of your expletive deleted mind?"
Expletive deleted.
And because this is 1970, we don't know if, it's not 72. Yeah. Westerdahl's only 34. So we don't know if that's a god or if that's effing.
Oh, yeah.
Because today you would know what that blank was if you saw it in the New York Times. But because this is 1970, that could just be God.
Yeah, or like freaking. No, he wouldn't have said freaking.
He wouldn't have said freaking.
No,
like the freaks were saying freaking. But anyway, are you out of your, I've got an election seven weeks after the convention. But he also turns his swivel chair around and looks at the wall. I guess he talks to his legal counsel. He says, what are the implications of this? And they say, well, there's nothing in the rule book that says a golden retriever can't hold, it's the Air Bud rule. I guess we could have a free state-sponsored music Woodstock in a Oregon State Park, I guess.
Sure. It's like a Hamsterdam.
Exactly. It's Hamsterdam for hippies.
Yeah.
But he says, the legal counsel says, it's very likely you will lose the election because of this. Because because
it's a law and order state.
It's red state Oregon. It's loggers and their families, and a state-sponsored Woodstock is not what they signed up for when they elected Tom McCall.
What's funny is that throughout the 80s and 90s, we always thought of Oregon as half loggers, half pot farmers.
Yeah.
But this is pre-pot farmer, or the pot farmers were just moving in. And it's weird to think of because Oregon's still a very, very conservative state if you get out of the pot farmer corridor.
If you get 25 minutes out of Portland, you have school boards that are worried about critical race theory.
Yeah. And anywhere outside of that, outside of that corridor,
like
even on the coast.
It's suburbs. It's like Oswego, it's.
So, but it's funny to think of it as, but that was true of everywhere.
Yeah.
Except everywhere that wasn't San Francisco.
So into this environment, McCall, to his credit, spins around in his chair and says, I've made my decision and I've just committed political suicide.
Oh, he's going to do it anyway.
We are going to have a state-sponsored music festival. He gives them McIver Park in Estacada, just southeast of Portland.
So he's thinking the alternative is a bunch of
Chicago.
violence, and that's not going to work.
We're going to be on Cronkite or Brinkley Huntley, because people are going to be bleeding in the streets of Portland. And he's not wrong. We saw that is what happens when there's demonstrations in northwestern cities. So he agrees to give them this park in southeast Portland. He agrees that the cops southeast of Portland. It's not in southeast. And it's announced as a state-sponsored free music festival. Like, they don't make any, it's not like COINTEL Pro. It's not some Black Ops thing where they later find out that all the money came from some slush fund. Like, the papers announce it as the governor's pot party. So immediately, I'm sure he's not doing great in the polls.
Governor's pot party. That's what they should have called the festival.
And so there's a bunch of music. There's a couple days of music, but there's also like panel discussions, and it's a whole be-in. When you look at you should look at the lineup. I don't know how well you know the Oregon music scene of 1970. If you look at reminiscences of the event, it's all about how Santana was there and Grateful Dead were going to be there, and I hear Jefferson Airplane is there. In fact, like, none of those bands actually played, although contemporary reporting says that, and presumably they reached out and, Oregon was not going to pay their quote.
I've seen Santana 4 different times in the 1980s.
That might be too many times to see Santana.
And I saw the Grateful Dead twice, once with Santana. Santana's better on paper than in person. I watched Santana play an entire show once where he never faced the audience. He just faced the drummer.
I've seen Bob Dylan do that. That's why you need Rob Thomas. You need Rob Thomas out there, like,
shaking
playing up to all the teenage girls out there.
Did I ever tell you about the time I met Rob Thomas?
No.
I was walking down the street in New York City with Hodgman, and Rob Thomas is getting out of a BMW. We're down in the Lower East Side. And he looks at us and he recognizes John Hodgman and gets this huge smile on his face, like so psyched to meet John Hodgman. John Hodgman has no idea who he is. And I know who Rob Thomas is, of course, because I'm conversant, or was at the time, with popular culture.
You're a keystone in this event. So it's a very interesting situation.
So the two of them have this, Rob Thomas marches right over like, John Hodgman, hi, man, huge fan. And John's like, thank you. Like just dealing with him like he's just a fan who happens to have a bunch of earrings. And I'm just like beaming at the weirdness of the moment. But of course, I don't explain because I don't want to explain.
Were you not tempted to explain?
Absolutely, but I choked it back.
You could have created a little moment.
No, I was like, this is the perfect moment for me. This is me. I get this.
Sociopath, I see. Did you tell Hodgman later?
Later.
Okay. And he had to Google Matchbox 20, probably.
No, I think he'd heard of them at least.
In fact, the lineup is just entirely Oregon bands.
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd Jones and the Brown Sugar Band, Jacob's Ladder, Mixed Blood, Portland Zoo.
These are still band names in Portland to this day.
Two band. So no national acts really, no national rock acts really came in. Gene Chandler, known for his hit Duke of Earl.
Oh yeah.
Played. I guess by this time he had like a backing band called Funk. So he had presumably embraced Black is Beautiful. And blues harmonica great Charlie Musselwhite.
Yep, sure.
Played. Apparently, so if you're a blues fan, boy, this is the weekend for you.
Well, and this was at a time when American blues artists were able to tour the States, but also still kind of they hadn't like had their third revival yet. So
there was some crossover, right? With the
with
the young,
like Howlin'
Wolf, the young lefty types. Like they liked listening to, like, there's plenty of those bluesy bands at Woodstock the year before.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Apparently Ginger Baker of Cream was there but did not play, which is very confusing.
That seems super weird.
Why is he just
He's a big Charlie Musselwhite
suburban fan. Portland. Yeah, exactly. He was just in Charlie Musselwhite's bus.
From what I know of that guy, I'm very surprised he didn't get up. He was probably playing bongos somewhere.
And the festival turns out to be a huge success on the face of it.
Oh, I'm excited to hear this.
50 to 100,000 people. The traffic jam goes 20 miles back to Portland. They had not built, what was the name of the beltway that opened? Is that the 205?
The 405?
No, I think we have the 405. Do they have the 205? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about.
You're talking about the one that goes around Portland?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, was that open in 1970?
No, that's what I'm saying.
No, it wasn't there.
Like that not having been there, there's a lot less. There's it's not as easy to get to this point south of Portland.
No, and this is south of Clackamas. It's
Clackamas County.
Even now, it's not on the way to anywhere.
No, but the traffic backs up to what is now that Clackamas retail
right,
center. 82nd, and so 20 miles of traffic, 50 to 100,000 kids.
I feel like this area all burned in that giant forest fire last year. I feel like there's nothing left of this whole area now.
There were some attempts to make trouble, some drunk loggers. I think the park is still there. I just looked at pictures of the state park.
Yeah, but did it?
Let's see how wooded it looks.
Is it still there and completely denuded?
There are trees.
You're looking at it I'm
looking at
the live cam.
We go now to Milo McIver State Park in the omnibus newscopter. No, I'm just looking at photos of the campgrounds there.
Those could be 2 years old.
Oh, you mean the fires from
the big fires last
summer?
Yeah, the ones that burned all the way to the edges of Portland.
I guess you're right. A few years ago, like my sister's house in Medford, they were all packed up and ready to go because it was going to hop the freeway. So there was no trouble with cops. Like a few drunken loggers showed up to try to, make some trouble with the hippies.
Yes, they do.
And they were the only arrests made, I think.
Yeah, that's the way it should be.
For the most part, everybody smoked whatever they wanted and everybody took off all the clothes they wanted.
Yeah.
And see, this is your ideal weekend. You say you hate hippies, but this is now your perfect weekend. The People's Army Jamboree was not happy about the counter programming. And so they sent in activists to try to stir up trouble.
Uh-huh.
I was going to say a naughty word, but we don't do that on this show.
Yeah, except you just said that you just took the Lord's name in vain just recently.
I was quoting Governor Tom McCall, a Republican. So it's okay.
Apparently here, now I'm resorting to Revit or to Reddit, not Revit.
This is where you get your news about the Oregon forest fires?
But it says here that the Milo McIver Park survived the forest fire, but of course this is Reddit, so that could not be.
That's the front page of the internet.
Oh, sure. You're right.
It's got to be right.
Right.
The People's Army Jamboree sent some activists in, hoping to try to lure some of these crowds away to some butt kicking at the American Legionnaires Convention. And by all accounts, the tactic taken by the Vortex organizers, by the way, the full name, this is pretty good. The forename was Vortex, a biodegradable festival of life. We usually say Vortex 1 today, even though there was no Vortex 2. But it filled a very specific need.
The festival itself was biodegradable. Wow.
Yeah, not just the sandwich bags that people brought.
Right.
Literally the festival biodegraded away on Sunday morning. So when the People's Army sent in their rabble rousers, basically the nearest college age women would just, take off their tops and just surround the guy with the megaphone and just coo and and tickle his ears until
this was really a tactic,
apparently. And I don't know if this is just what comes naturally to you when you've been eating mushrooms all weekend and you're wearing loose fitting clothing, or if somebody was deploying these women.
Yeah, but
it appeared to work. Like nobody was that interested in Cambodia once they had a hippie chick whispering sweet nothings.
I wonder if that tactic could be weaponized to eliminate war.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of the Lysistrata strategy.
Yeah.
You need to just be having so much sex that there's no time for any kind of
or potential
activism.
Sex, not actual sex.
No.
I mean, although that would eliminate war too, but it'd be harder to deploy.
Right. There's a refractory period involved.
Yeah, right.
The whole thing turned out to be pretty anticlimactic because Nixon didn't show.
Literally. Wait a minute. Nixon didn't come.
Well, no, he didn't show. We
I
don't.
see. Okay.
History does not relate. He sent Spiro Agnew instead.
Boo.
Which I'm sure was Agnew's a force for evil too for the left, but
Sure.
that's not a rallying cry for. You're not going to get busloads coming up from Berkeley to boo Spiro Agnew, right?
I do feel like Spiro Agnew and the Portland or the Oregon VFW, or it's not VFW though. American Legion. I feel like they're at the same level, right? Nixon would be a 10 to the American Oregon American Legion's 4.
But this is the National American Legion Convention. Legionnaires have come all over the country.
Even so,
to Portland.
Nixon's pretty hot at that moment. I think Agnew's about the level.
There was some worry that, when the kids started to peel off later in the festival, as will happen, and everybody was kind of worried,
Will happen if the Dead doesn't show.
Are they? Yeah. Once they find out it's just Lloyd Jones and his Brown Sugar Band. And they're going to head downtown. This is where the ruckus starts. But instead the kids just went home. They'd had a rough weekend. They just wanted to sleep in their own beds, I think. The People's Army Jamboree assembles. 10,000 Legionnaires are still going to march through Portland on the Victory in Vietnam banner. So they're
doing this as a provocation, it sounds like, kind of. Right?
I mean, maybe more of a political one than I don't know if they're hoping for police intervention, but yeah, they want to be on the news as a force for law and order here and in Indochina.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing happens. The People's Army Jamboree brings its depleted forces to the march in hopes of making trouble also. And
it's 40 kids.
It's a big nothing burger. For a moment, it looks like things might get tense. And then like an old lady stands in front of the cops and says, "Shame on you." And the moment evaporates.
Shame.
That's exactly what happens. And so violence is averted. There is no second Chicago in the streets of Portland.
It feels like the Decemberists video for 16 Military Wives.
I can't believe there's not a Decemberist song about Vortex I. Maybe there is. But 7 weeks later, Tom McCall was reelected in a landslide.
Yeah!
56% of the vote.
Okay.
And I think it's largely because of Vortex I. Like,
Sure.
It seemed statesmanlike.
Yeah, people realized, that's how you do it.
Just put all the hippies in a state park somewhere and...
It's like distracting a toddler with the kid keeps wanting to drink the borax. Let's put some pie over on Nana's chair and we'll pull the kid away.
The American Legion Convention here is the Tide Pod, but you just need to distract them with the chill sounds of the Bluey theme. Or in this case, the blues rock stylings of Charlie Musselwhite and the Duke of Earl guy.
Now, I wonder, we talk a lot recently in American politics about the way that the conservatives have gamed the electoral process in a lot of different ways. They've redistricted
electorally.
They've passed a lot of voting restrictions. They've done a lot of gerrymandering. They get on school boards.
They're good with the grassroots stuff.
Yeah, it's all
angry up the suburbanites with kind of made up stuff.
Right, the ground game, and then the liberals are really bad at ground game, and they keep trying to convince people, which is the liberal way, right? You want to convince them of the logic of your positions, even though there is no reason left in the world. Why wouldn't the liberals start ground gaming elections by just having country festivals in all the major, right outside all of the major kind of southern cities, just put together some Guns and God kind of, monster truck festival on election day. Just within 50 miles of every major southern city, and then just, call it quits. I mean, that would be enough, right? You just pull them away. You just put a little Jello over on Nana's rocking chair.
Same rules. You guys can smoke whatever you want.
You can smoke whatever you want. I mean, these days, right? It's the Appalachians that are smoking all the weed.
Sure, that's pretty much a Republican platform now, is legalize weed.
Yeah, what you do is you hand out free OxyContin. And,
come to Hillbilly Elegy 1.
And that concludes Vortex I, entry 1403.JM0318, certificate number 21362 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that social media still exists in your era, you can find Omnibus Project on all of the social media platforms. You can find Ken Jennings at Ken Jennings, still talking about the news probably over there on the internet.
Probably not.
And then I'm at John Roderick, largely in
Defunct.
largely just archived, but every once in a while I chime in there and direct people to my Patreon. You can email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. You can seek out other Futurelings on all these social media platforms by just Googling the word Futurelings.
On Facebook or Reddit or whatever.
Right, put it into the search bar.
They'll all come running like it's the headliner at a Presidents of the USA show.
Yeah, just
appear.
Just put a flag that says Futurelings on top of your RV at any major American festival, and Futurelings will congregate there. Speaking of Patreon, you can support our show at patreon.com/omnibusproject. It is a great thing that you do. It's hard to podcast. It's not
Twice a week. How many things do you do for an hour twice a week? You guys probably don't even you don't even exercise.
You don't
for an
go
hour
to the
twice
bathroom 2 times a week.
for an hour.
Futurelings. It may surprise you, but there are a lot more podcasts than there are people earning a living at podcasting. It isn't as easy as it sounds.
You make it all possible.
You do. At patreon.com/omnibusproject. And you can send us mail, real life mail, as long as the U.S. Postal Service continues to exist, at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155. Ken, I hear you rustling with a package over there.
Yeah,
What'd you get?
I hit the mailer. This one actually says John Roderick, care of the Omnibus Project. So it's not clear whether this is show related or not. Oh, it is show related.
What is it? Why is it just to me?
I need to find out who sent this to us. I think we got a note.
Is it naked pictures?
Here we go. I like when because they Amazon this, but I remember reading the email.
Oh, they did send a note via Amazon?
Ben Sherrill of Nolensville, Tennessee, which is where we'll be holding Hillbilly Elegy 1 this November. John mentioned that he was always running out of forks.
Yes, I'm out of forks. I was thinking about it this morning.
Well, are you a college sophomore? Why do you not have forks?
Well, so
I don't have oyster forks, but that's a little different level problem.
When I moved, I decided, my silverware drawer has always been just like a collection of random silverware that I picked up along the way. Nothing matches. My plates don't match. My cups don't match. It was a thing.
You're the boxcar children.
But I am. But when I got to my new house, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have only things that match. And so I started going to like those little kiosks at country fairs that are selling hand-thrown bowls. Yeah. And I was like, it's all going to match in the sense that it was all made by somebody, but I bought a bunch of bowls that don't actually nest together because they're all handmade by hippies.
Couldn't you just buy a bunch of Fiestaware or something?
Well, so I tried that too, but anyway, what I did was I went through my silverware and I took out all the non-matching things. Well, it turned out
that's all your silverware.
Well, I have a million knives and spoons of this one particular set, but I wasn't paying attention as I did it, and I only kept like 4 forks.
Right. You're an Alanis Morissette song now.
Yeah. Was there an Alanis Morissette song about only having 4 forks?
Yeah. I think it's called Dave Coulier Only Has 4 Forks. So these are not only do you have 4 more forks now, but look where they were made.
Oh, they're Oneida forks, and there's 4 of them.
It's an omnibus callback.
I've doubled the number of forks I have.
You have forks from a 19th century Second Great Awakening religious cult.
Well, Ken, you and Mindy are coming over for dinner this Saturday, and I'm gonna offer you a choice of forks now.
We get the guest forks.
I'm gonna say, look, do you want the Oneida forks? Look at them; they're quite substantial. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.
Well, see, that was to me, but we're both gonna benefit because you and Mindy are gonna be able to
look at you sharing the wealth.
Use the forks.
Listeners, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe fear may never come, but if we're forked, if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final recording. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.